need a little bit of that as a country. Okay, legendary musician Sipho Hotstix Mabuse will be 68 years old tomorrow, and celebrations have already started. Mabuse became popular in the 1980s with his Burnout album, which sold more than 500,000 copies. He made headlines in 2012 when he went back to school to finish matric 44 years after he dropped out of school. Currently, he's finishing his degree in Anthropology. I sat down with him at his home in Pimville in Soweto just to look back at his journey. Okay, we are talking to a man regarded as one of South Africa's most loved musicians. He's been at this for more than 50 years, 5 decades in the world of music. Sipho Hotstix Mabuse, welcome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. It's always lovely to speak to you.
You are celebrating your 68th birthday on the 2nd of November, and it's a wonderful occasion, but you're doing it in a very special way. So we thought we'd just do some reflection at this time. When you look back, 50 plus years of this journey in the world of music, what comes to mind for you first? What are the things that pop up?
You know, given the beginning on how this whole thing, happened, one of the things that pops up is the fact that it started at high school. There was no intention to become a professional musician. But somewhat there was some intervention either from my ancestors of God, to say, okay, we choose this path for you. And that for me is very critical. And the fact that the performance that I'm going to be doing is in an area, in a place where I was born, place where I grew up.
So you're doing a special performance for people of Soweto?
Yes.
And in Orlando West at a venue called Just Badela, where they do jazz things now and again. So you selected to be home in order to mark this birthday?
Especially on my birthday, yes. It's a special venue because one of the things that I always emphasize is that many of the jazz venues have closed. And it takes a very courageous person to want to open a jazz venue, particularly in Soweto. Soweto has always had a dearth of performance venues. And for Dumi to take the leap of faith and begin to think that, I need to be around Soweto to ensure that people recognize and honor South African musicians in that venue was very critical for me.
Showcasing locally based talent.
Yes.
You've always lived in Soweto. We're in your home here. And when I arrived, I said to you, wow, this is your home. Why have you stayed in Soweto when many other people, and you could have left earlier?
I've stayed in Soweto so that I remain consciously aware of my surroundings. I've stayed in Soweto so that I remain indebted to the people that made me who I am and have contributed to the person that I become, and that I can perhaps be an inspiration, inversely, and also to be able to be observant of the things that I can make contributions to in terms of advancing socio-economic issues.
Have you seen much change in the 25 years of democracy?
Look, in many interviews that I make, I always say we should not be very hard on ourselves as a people, as a country. Yes, every country has got its own challenges. South Africa has had its own challenges. However, it is those who are in authority positions that must make conscious decision as to how quick and how far we advance this country.
Now, I was born and bred in White City, Jabavu, here in Soweto, and I grew up there. I remember going to many weddings as we were growing up where the beaters used to play.
Yes.
And that's when we used to see you when we were young and watching you play. And that's the early days in the 70s. And the beaters then transformed themselves to Harare after you had visited the then Rhodesia, before it was Zimbabwe, and performed there. Those were the early days of your stage. When you look back at that time, Was it the foundation that gave you the inspiration, rather, to go towards jazz?
You know, I'd like to believe that my colleagues and I have always been conscientious people about what it is. Why have we become musicians? Why do we become musicians? Yes, it was maybe by default that we became musicians. However, once we were in that space, we understood our purpose of being musicians, to transcend, fashion trends and so on, so we became inventive at all times, and that being inventiveness kept us in contention.
Your style, your genre of music, today you're known from a jazz perspective, as I've said, but you've done Afro pop, you've done what some people might call funk from the township style.
Yes.
When I'm thinking about the Shitisha of this world, the Jive Soweto of this world, think about the famous Burnout of this world. Which one of these are you comfortable with most?
Well, Dan, I'm comfortable with music in general. People would be surprised if I said that I'm a classically trained player. One of the things that I used to do was to hang around the late Professor Kabim Goma. He was the one that inspired me in a way. That's why I play the flute. I was trained to play classically on flute. But of course I gave up because I guess I was impatient as a performer, and I wanted to be out there performing music that everybody can see me perform. So all the other music I'm very comfortable in, except, unfortunately, the young musician today.
Have you been driven by wanting to make hits? I'm asking this because when I mentioned the name to some people, they said, we know Burnout. It's like a one-hit wonder thing. But then there are other songs you've done and you've performed, recorded and produced for the likes of the late Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masekela. You've also worked with people like Sibongile Khumalo and Ray Phiri.
Yes, I have worked with them. Yeah, well, people obviously know me for that particular song, but they don't even know because they don't have Harare's history, that I've written most of their songs that actually, catapulted that group to the international status. I mean, I recorded songs like Party Give and so on with my band, Harare, the Beaters. Even within the Beaters, I used to write songs. Obviously, Burnout was just the pinnacle of everything that I've written. If you ask the Beatles what would have been the greatest songs they've ever written, they will tell you yesterday, Let It Be, were their song. So, like any other artist, there'll always be this song that stands out that people remember.
Any regrets?
Regrets, maybe a few. Yes, that, I'd never really got enough time to spend with all my children as much as I would have wanted to. Those are some of my regrets. However, one of the things that I also hopefully I can attain is to complete my degree. Then
yes, you did matric just a couple of years. How old were you when you did matric?
I was 16.
And everybody, including the then President Jacob Zuma, were congratulating you that, you're doing the right thing. So what degree are you busy with now?
I'm doing anthropology, but at the moment I've deferred because of the workload, in my space is just unbearable. So I'm compelled to say, look, let me take a little bit of time and, concentrate on the things that I feel I should finish. But definitely, God willing, when I'm 70, I'll be holding my certificate, my degree, and saying I've completed in 2 years' time. Well, I've already done a year or so too.
The world of music in South Africa today, as it stands, we've got different genres that over the years have come. South Africans are very creative. We come up with all kinds of styles, right from the old days of Umbakanga, you're coming right through to Maskandi, and on the other side you've got your urban hits and soul music with the Beaters in the 70s, right up to today we've got the Kwaitos, and then the youngsters have got Gqom. When you hear all of this and you see that, are you hopeful that the South African music industry has got a bright future?
I'd like to hope. I live with hope all the time. I'm not a pessimist. However, I do believe that we could do more to advance and enhance music, especially with the younger generation.
What is that?
And there's a tendency to believe that certain music assume superior status and that is wrong, because once we immediately assume certain music assumes superiority state, we're not allowing young people to grow and develop themselves into musicians. For instance, there's a young player called Oscar. Oscar is Banira Chabani's grandson. He's very young, and he's dabbling in serious jazz. And I said to him, Oscar, you need to play all the other music so that you understand that you were once young, you know. And unfortunately, if you don't do that, when the other young people come and listen to you, all you know is you think you're happening and you lost out. So we must embrace everything that is about us, that is musical, so that we're able to share ideas. You know, if you look at the late great Miles Davis, young people would say, I want to be like Miles, because what Miles did, he took what he was able to do as a jazz player and infused it with the younger hip-hop stuff. And young people were able to appreciate jazz from that perspective.
Thank you. As we conclude, I would like you to stand and play a few bars with your
soprano side.
Giving our viewers on eNCA a little bit of a taste of what people at Jazz Padela, the venue that you are celebrating your 68th birthday, are hearing or have been hearing.
Well, I'd love to play the flute, really.
Okay.
Because you've never heard me play.
Happy birthday, Sipho Hotstix Mabuse, turning 68 tomorrow. It was really lovely, and thank you very much for welcoming us into your home. We here at eNCA, we wish you all the best, including with that anthropology degree, which if you carry on with it, you will graduate when you turn 70. What an achievement, inspiring many of us that we can also follow our dreams.